I guess my main message, actually, in all of this talk about nightmares and visions and behavior and communication, is there's actually some sense in going back to the literature on how people behave and how people receive messages, to try and found some of the discussion in some of the evidence. On that matter, the small commercial, which I hadn't planned to do, but I suddenly realized could be relevant to one or two people, so I'll say it. Environmental psychology for many years has been a very, very small bit of the discipline, rather neglected actually by its peers in psychology. But both the American Psychological Association and the British Psychological Society in the last year or so have woken up to the fact that sustainability is a big issue for them. And so there is going to be a conference this coming Tuesday in London at the Royal Society of Arts off the Strand, where we are talking about the role of psychology and climate change, and a number of the research groups working on this are coming together, as well as Paul Stern from the National Academy of Sciences. I know it's quite well booked up, but if anybody does want to come, it's primarily for policymakers like yourself, people who are in the business of influencing the world. So if anybody's interested, they should let me know immediately after this session, because I can give you the email to who to talk to about that. So my talk actually holds several nightmares and visions, which is a bit unfortunate, but I'll try to be positive at the end. And just why study people at all? Well, actually, it's a rather curious fact, isn't it, that in the debate about climate change policies, much of the focus is upon technology or economic solutions. But as we know, people in society are the main cause of greenhouse gas emissions. Everything we do, whether you call it overconsumption or unsustainable lifestyles, it's people at the root of this problem. So they're actually going to have to be part of the solution. I probably don't have to bring that message to you. But if you talk in policy circles, it's all economics, it's all new technology. They kind of tend to forget that people are involved in this, this whole process and are going to have to be involved in the solutions. There we go. So why study behavior? What sorts of things do we look at? And why is it important? And there's a whole range of things I could mention, just a few here. Some people, as we've heard, still don't believe the science. There's actually some evidence that skepticism may actually be on the rise, which is slightly disturbing currently. Policy instruments or technologies, if we think about the proposal for renewal of nuclear power or the 7 barrage proposals in this area, will only work if they get public buy-in. So there's an immediate link to public perceptions and attitudes. Surprisingly, if you start to look at a lot of climate policies, start reading into DEFRA documents if you're really that sad, then you will find that they make assumptions about the population's behavior, uptake of energy efficiency or driving behavior, etc., without really founding it on any evidence of whether this change in behavior is possible. Perceptions have real consequences, but of course, fortunately, we do know that if we change attitudes and knowledge, then this can often be related to actual behavior. So there is a positive end to this message. Now, this is my first nightmare, and it goes a bit like this. Some of you may know that that is the target we're looking for. This is from the Stern report. It's the risks of a number of impacts under different global temperature change. And really, a policy has been working with this one, 2 degrees C, for a time now. It said we mustn't get across that because then we enter the realm of dangerous climate change. Well, if you talk to the scientists off the record, they will, almost all of them will now say that that 2 degrees C is unattainable, that we are going to pass 2 degrees C, even if we actually do some fairly drastic things. So we are now starting to talk about the finite probability, it's low but it's real, of a 4 or 5 degree rise in temperature over the next 90 years or so. And that will bring some very serious consequences, particularly down the bottom here, the risk of dangerous feedbacks, which may then bring further rapid warming and climate change. So that isn't a very nice message to bring, but it has to be the start of the whole conversation here, I think. Now, just to move on to people, what do we know about public views? I was asked to talk about this. Well, we do know from research, polling and qualitative research, people are concerned. We've known for a number of years that there is some confusion in there Not exactly a knowledge deficit, but people do confuse certain issues with climate change. The ozone hole is a good one that's been there for a while. People see this is very important, a distant problem, so it affects somebody else or it affects another time, so it doesn't affect me personally, and often see the effects, but don't necessarily connect them with the anthropogenic causes. Many of the causes, of course, are quite invisible in the fabric of your everyday life. We're causing this now. I sat in a room in Oxford once, wonderfully lit with sunlight, and a load of climate change delegates were sitting there. Somebody pointed out all the lights were on. And of course, nobody had spotted this. You didn't need the lights on because this was a great, wonderfully designed building and sustainable building. So very often these things are invisible. And making them visible is a very important aspect of all of this, I think. Just to give you a small bit of data, that's from Eurobarometer. You may have seen something similar actually from Ed earlier from Ipsos. If you actually ask what is important in life, climate change falls down. It's not the most important thing to the average person out there in the street. So that was asked, I think, 6 months ago, and poverty, lack of food, the global economic downturn was more important in terms of issues that were at the top of the mind for people. So it's not there all the time for everybody. This is something we asked in 2005 on a major GB survey. You ask people if they think the climate is changing. Yes, they say. Some people still think it's due to natural causes, actually. Not all, everybody, probably the boat owners, would come up with this explanation. And if you look at the causes they come up with, some of them are okay, cars, planes, transport. The one above, air pollution, is a slightly contested one because it's a general thought that we are doing something to the atmosphere. There's actually some evidence that's actually quite an interesting angle to use communication around, that people are very receptive to the message that we are polluting the world's atmosphere in relation to climate change. But again, loss of the ozone layer, you do interviews, people say, well, there's a hole in the atmosphere, isn't there? Because we know there's a hole, and it's letting more sunlight through and it's warming the air up. So that's the kind of the mental model that people have, some people have of climate change. And that, of course, that would lead to inappropriate behavior, because all you do is worry about deodorants and CFCs, and you've solved the problem. So that's why that's actually quite an important issue in all of this. I'll show this. The computer here removed the text, so I'll just explain. We asked this also on the same survey, which one, if any of these, do you think should be mainly responsible for taking action against climate change? And interestingly, individuals and their families, so 2005, it's interesting, we're going to redo this, I think, fairly shortly. Only 8% said individuals and their family primarily responsible, and the majority was the national governments and the international community. Not unreasonably, many people reason that it's too large a problem for them to influence personally, and therefore, it's an international government type thing. So there's an externalizing of responsibility. People don't like to see it's something to do with them.